Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am in a little bit of a different situation today. I'm currently packing for the UK, so that's really exciting. My flight is tomorrow. Pat, who is in that other room, his flight is today, so I'm really jealous, but I have work today, so I cannot fly out, which is really annoying because ideally I would be able to. Anyways, I'm currently packing because that's something I need to do, but also I just find it easier talking this way because I feel like I don't know if it's because we grew up in the age of technology, but I feel it's easier for me to talk while I'm doing something with my hands. It has nearly been a year since I have been in Australia. I first arrived on the 1st of January 2025, and it is currently the 28th of December 2025. I kind of just wanted to make a video about just some lessons that I've learned. I made a video similar to this right in the beginning. If you do want to give it a watch, it's going to be up here somewhere. But I kind of just moved to Australia then. I think I filmed it in February, and I feel like I didn't really know enough, especially when making that video, and also I was still quite excited about moving. I mean, it's an exciting process, especially when it's something that you've wanted to do for a long time. So I kind of just wanted to make a video that's more practical, not only to Australia, but to other countries. And I wanted to give it a less biased take, because I feel like maybe my first video, when you look at something through rose-colored glasses, I feel like I did that a little bit, especially with my first video, and some of my opinions have kind of changed, and I think I have a more balanced perspective now. Here's me talking about how I found this year and packing for the UK. So one of the first things I've learned, especially about moving to a new country, but this is just applicable for just any country you decide to move to, is the renting market. I think it's so important to know the areas, know the market, just generally the rental market, and most importantly, know your rights. I think especially as an international student, I'm quite lucky in the sense that the rental market is quite similar between the UK and Australia, so I generally had an idea, and also I knew people that have rented here, so I talked to them a lot. But especially with some of my international friends, it was really hard for them right in the beginning to find a place that honestly didn't charge them extortionately. I think from my experience in the UK and knowing international students in the UK, landlords would charge really high prices for a box, and unfortunately it's the same in Australia. And I don't really want to say it, but also university housing is also very much a scam. I know one of my friends, she was charged $500 a week to share a room. She had a roommate, she didn't have anything to herself, and she was charged $500. She moved out very quickly because I think she realized. But I think it's in moments like these, I think it's so important to be transparent about what you're paying and what you're getting, because how are you going to know unless you tell someone? Also, another thing is, and this might not be necessarily the university, but once you move out into, let's say an area you like and you get an apartment you like, unfortunately landlords might try to bend the rules and try to, let's say, maybe increase the rent, or for example keep some money from the bond and not tell you and not give it back to you at the end of your lease. I think again, in moments like those, it's so important to know your rights. You can go on the New South Wales website and access everything that you need to know as a tenant. And also, again, I think it's so important just to speak to people that live in the country that you want to live in or live in the city that you want to live in. A way around this, and again, this might not work for everyone because it really depends if you know anyone in that place, I would recommend staying with someone until you find an area you want to live in. Number one, you can ask them all the questions that you need, and you also have that support. Another thing is it gives you more time. You don't feel the rush to find a place ASAP, to move in ASAP. You always have that base. So I think that's really important in order for you to make an informed decision about where you want to live. Also, this is something I know this might not be for everyone, not everyone would want to do this, but you also could just message people on social media. You could just reach out to someone, maybe you used to be friends with them or maybe you didn't, I don't know. But if you have them on Insta and you know they're in Sydney, just message them. Just message them and ask. I think it's worth it in order just to save you the stress and the pain of finding a place. One of my friends is taking his landlord to court, so I think it's really important to save you those situations. My second lesson, and something that, really hurts me personally, healthcare. Please know if you're eligible for healthcare in that country, especially if they have a public healthcare service. When I first moved to Australia and I went through the university process, it was really important that I got healthcare, and the university made that very clear to me. Now, I clearly didn't think that I was eligible for healthcare in Australia, so I went private, and that's usually what most international students do. They go private. And it wasn't until September of this year I realised that I was eligible for their public health service, which is Medicare. And I've always been eligible for it, and I had no clue. If I had known before I moved, I would have saved so much money. I think I paid almost $2,000 on private health insurance for 2 years. And I cannot cancel it, nor can I get a refund or anything. But I think it's so important to know your healthcare rights in the country that you're moving to, and I clearly didn't before I moved. Australians are eligible for Medicare. If you have a Medicare card, you have discounted medications, especially if it's on the PBS. And I didn't realise that I was eligible for Medicare, which is really annoying. And I have it now, but I really should have researched that. And I could have saved so much money. if I had known that and I applied for Medicare as soon as I came to Australia. Because also with my private health insurance, I paid all that money, but regarding medications, they only rebate, I think, up to $60. So if my medication cost like $120, I'd still have to pay $60 out of pocket. Whereas with Medicare, it would have just been $31.60. Before you move to a country, or even if you're a Brit moving to Australia, please note if you're eligible for that public health service. In Australia, I think they have like a reciprocal health agreement, so Australians are eligible for their public health service, and then visitors of that country are eligible for Australia's public health service. And I think there are 11 countries, the UK included, that are eligible. I'll put the list up here. But if you're in, and you're thinking of moving to Australia, please research Medicare and know if you're eligible. It's also even more embarrassing because my degree is like pharmacy, like I should have known this. I work in a pharmacy, like I really should have known this. But yeah, it's a lesson learned, and it was a lesson learned a bit too late. So my third thing that I also think is quite important when you move to a country is what you're going to do for work. Before they move countries, obviously a lot of people plan or at least have like a buffer of savings before they start work. In my opinion, I think Australia has a very relaxed work culture. And at first, especially applying, I didn't think anyone was going to hire me. Who was going to hire me? Like, this country has plenty of people. What are they going to need me for? And I feel like I didn't really have enough confidence when applying at first. And I wish I did, because I could have gotten a job sooner. I mean, luckily I had like a little buffer as well, so I didn't need a job ASAP. It would have been nice to have a job sooner. However, in saying that, I think before you start applying, I think it's really important to obviously know the industry and know the CV requirements. A difference I can think of between the UK CV and the Australian CV is that the UK CV, from my experience, never really needed a skills section. The Australian CV does. And I didn't realize that until I asked around. I asked a lot of my Australian friends and I looked at their CVs, and in every one I always noticed that they had a skills section and I just didn't in my CV. Another thing is they always have a university CV template on the university website, and I use that as well as a base. So I think it's really important just to know the CV layout that you need and what types of CVs are required for your industry. And this kind of leads me onto a little bit of what I'm studying. So I was lucky in the sense that my undergrad was very similar to pharmacy. It was pharmacology. First, thinking about coming to Australia, I actually wanted to study a different course. And it wasn't until, honestly, I mass messaged people on LinkedIn. Like I found people that studied the course at the university I wanted to go to, and I just messaged them, and I just messaged so many of them, and surely one was going to reply, and luckily he did. And he was kind enough to have a Zoom call with me, and in that Zoom call I asked him a lot of questions about the university, but also just about the job market and the industry that I'd be going into after I graduated. And he enjoyed the university. His issue was the industry, and after talking to him I completely changed courses. And I'm very glad I did that, because the industry I was going into, I don't think it would have gotten me the job that I wanted to have. So I think that's also really important. Obviously, not everyone moves country to study. Like, I get that. But if you are moving countries to study, think about that. But generally, especially when applying to jobs, just have confidence. You'd be surprised. I didn't think I was going to get a job as quick as I did when I just started applying and stopped, like, being scared of failure and rejection. Another thing, and this is something that's not applicable for everyone, but please know if the country you're moving to, or wherever you're moving to, if it is a driving city or a walking city. And what I mean by that is if it has good public transport systems. Unfortunately, I don't think Australia does. I think it's such a big country, and I think it's a very new country as well, and I just honestly don't think they've had enough time to establish transport networks. So please be aware of that, because that, unfortunately, I didn't realize this so much, but it really impacts everything you do, where you work, how you're going to get to uni, where you live, how you're going to see your friends, just anything. How you're going to get groceries, how you're going to, I don't know, go to hospital if you so need to. And you don't realize it until you need transport ASAP. And I think that is something so important to consider. In New South Wales, I think you can use, depending on the country you're from, you can use your own license up to 6 months. And then after 6 months of entering that country, you need to transfer to the New South Wales driving license. I now have an NSW driving license. That was really annoying and tedious, and I had to pay $60 for it, which is really irritating for me, especially when I already had a driving license. And also because I've been driving for less than 3 years, they moved me down to provisional, which is also really annoying because now I have to drive around with like green P plates, when in the UK I was on a full license. So it is so important to know if you're able to drive, if you need lessons, and how you're going to navigate the city. Because what you do not want to do is pick a place, pick a job, and then realize you cannot get there. That sucks. That truly sucks. And also another thing, know the toll roads. The amount of times I've gotten lost in Sydney and accidentally gone on a toll road and got tolled is insane. The amount of money I've racked up from those tolls. One time I was trying to get somewhere, I think it was when I went to Pearl Beach, which is in this video. I have it linked up here. I took a wrong turn and my navigation app, it changed the route. However, it didn't tell me that I would be racking up $20 in tolls just on the way there. And it was so irritating because the road that wasn't tolled, it would have been just, I think, 5 minutes slower. And I was in no rush. I should have known. And that was really irritating because it was easily avoidable. And if I just had more experience driving in that city, I would have known that. So yeah, please check what's tolled and what's not. I find in Europe, especially mainland Europe, it's a lot of motorways. In Sydney, it's the tunnels. A lot of tunnels are tolled, if not all of them. And some motorways, but not all of them. My very final thing about living abroad is the social life. Loneliness is definitely something that everyone goes through, and I think especially when you are living abroad and your family's not near, it can be really hard. You know, I know I was a little bit lonely during Christmas time, which is also why I distracted myself a lot with like a lot of activities and just always hanging out with someone. And I think especially when moving to a new country, make the most of finding friends. I would say I'm more extroverted than introverted. However, it does take me a while sometimes to warm up to someone, especially when I'm unsure in the first place. When moving here, especially at university, I was a lot more outgoing or like friendly. And usually I'm not as friendly. Especially at university, I was a lot more friendly. And it was purely just because I needed friends. That was it. And that was something that is so important because, you know, times that you feel sad, you always know you can just hang out with them. And also, you make some really good friends along the way. One of my friends that I made, she was the first girl I met in my course at uni. You know, she's quite a good friend of mine and she's like a really lovely person. So it really pays off in the best way sometimes. I think it's just taking that first step and just saying hi to someone. I think that's the scariest part. And then once you say hi to them, it's fine. Because also, especially when everyone's new, they're probably just as scared as you. I know people have made Bumble friends, like use Bumble to make friends. I haven't used Bumble friends so much, but like I would definitely be down to try it. And especially after some of my friends talking to me about their friends that they've made, I'm more inclined to try it because they haven't met any psychos. I think that's really important to make the most of the social life while coming to a new country. But I think it's also equally as important to maintain the friends you have back at home. I know it definitely can be hard, especially with the time difference, but it's so important just to send a text now and again and just to see how they are. Make time to hang out with them when you're back in your home country. I don't think it's something people realize as much. Like for me, especially moving to Australia, I was scared about rent and driving and like uni and work and stuff. I wasn't really thinking about friends so much. But I also think this kind of ties into my last point, which is to allow yourself time to adjust. I think I definitely thought I was going to adjust a lot quicker than I actually did. I felt really lost within in the first 6 months, and I doubted myself quite a bit. And the smallest thing that would go wrong, I'd be like, dang, maybe I should just go home. I didn't really know a lot of the time like what I was doing here. And I think that was just like a side effect of moving abroad. Everything was different. I mean, I'm lucky that nothing is too different. You know, it's so important just to allow yourself time to adjust. I think I fully adjusted in September this year. So I think I spent like the first 9 months just like wandering. And I did feel like I was drifting a little bit. I felt very unsure, especially in my career, because I just wasn't confident about getting a job. I just really didn't think I could get a job here. And then I was like kind of panicking because I was like, oh my God, like how am I going to make money? And yeah. I also was almost like thinking into the future a lot because especially when I first moved here, I was like, oh, can I be here in 5 years? What about 10 years? Could I be here in 2 years' time? And now I don't think like that anymore. I think my perspective has definitely changed and I live more in the present now. Right now I want to be here. Maybe that'll change. In like 2 months' time that might change. I sometimes think about that a lot and I live a lot more in the present. And you know, it's okay that I don't know where I want to be in 5 years. I don't think anyone really does in their 20s. It's such a weird time in your life. But yeah, that is just some things I've learned. I've kind of done some general packing. Actually, a lot of this is just what I'm going to take home and leave at home or exchange for like other clothes. But generally, this is what I'm going to bring. I'm also going to bring half an empty suitcase because I want to fill the other half of my suitcase with loads of stuff. That's why it's a little bit, I feel like it was like a weird packing. I hope you guys are doing well and please look after yourself. I hope you guys had a great New Year's. And I hope that maybe this was definitely a less biased review, but I hope that you can take some of this into whatever you want to do in the future. But yeah, bye.